Welcome to Metamorphosis with Dr. Tassel Faith. In the next hour, you will embark on a journey to awaken your inner identity, remember the truth of who you are, and come home to yourself. Enter your transformative chrysalis, experience the fundamental change you need, and emerge a leader for your own life and for the planet. Align with your spirit and become the being you were always meant to be. Leap fearlessly into the powerful change awaiting you. Transform your world naturally and supernaturally. Lead with your magic, trust the unseen, experience quantum leaps. Metamorphosis begins now.
Hello, welcome to the Metamorphosis Show. I'm Dr. Tassel Faith, your priestess of Metamorphosis, and we're so delighted you're here. Please stay with us over the next hour and let us help you experience your own personal metamorphosis. And I'm just so delighted to welcome our guest today, Mr. Brendan Murphy, who I've been friends with for a long time. This is one of our, I think, first to first face meetings, however. And he is just an amazing being on the planet. We're so honored that he's here with us. And I'll just start by sharing some of his amazing background. Brendan Murphy is the consciousness guy and host of the popular Truthiverse podcast. He is the author of the epic masterpiece, The Grand Illusion, a synthesis of science and spirituality, book 1, which has blown minds and changed lives around the world. He is also the founder of the Truthiversity, a one-of-a-kind multimedia learning portal for awake and discerning minds. Brendan's work is designed to push humanity and civilization towards a whole new concept of self and reality, which supports expanded freedom and deeper consciousness. Welcome, amazing Brendan.
Thanks for having me, Tassel.
You're so awesome. I'm grateful that we're friends, and really grateful that you're here. I have always been just deeply struck. It actually brings tears to my eyes by your authenticity and your just clear passion and commitment to truth, to consciousness elevation, and you're just the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, what you see is what you get, more or less.
So, and remind me, are you in Australia?
I left Australia at the end of 2021.
Oh, okay. Where are you living now?
Mexico.
Oh, that's interesting. Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a little freer at the time. I think it still might be.
Yeah, okay, that's amazing. Wonderful. So, what's sort of percolating in your world that you've been sort of thinking about these days?
Oh man, that's a lot. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of swirling in my mind at any given moment, and I think a lot of my attention is constantly drawn back to the health and the health medical stuff these days, because it's on everybody's minds. Everybody's talking about it. The last 3 years has put that on the map, front and center.
Yeah.
So I circle back to it every now and then, but the point of what I do is to show people that there's a different paradigm that is available than the ones we've been indoctrinated into. And even a lot of people who are quite knowledgeable in looking at things from a terrain point of view are still missing quite a few very important pieces of the puzzle. So yeah, I like to kind of fill in the blanks in the knowledge base if I can. And obviously I don't have all the answers myself, but yeah, just am a perpetual student of life and everything. So yeah, I cover a lot of ground through different topics. We could go wherever you want.
Yes, that's amazing. What topics within health and wellness are you really excited about bringing more truth and different paradigms to people?
Well, I mean, the thing that interests me is what we've been indoctrinated into the last 200 years. And, is that accurate? Is it based on facts? Is it logical? And does it serve us? Does it empower us? And the answers to all of those questions are overwhelmingly no.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you had a question there, you wanted to throw it out, go for it.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm currently running a program called Your Fountain of Youth, and it goes much deeper than sort of the superficial, oh, let's look younger, but into exactly what you're saying, how we've all been indoctrinated in the allopathic medicinal way, the orientation, which is very new. It really is only, say, the past 200 years.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
And we've really lost connection with the practices of humans through the course of time, including one of my favorite practices, which is cleansing the internal organs. So that's one of my big passions.
I like it. That's pretty sexy.
I know it really is not so sexy, right, at all. But yeah, I'm 54, and I'm commonly mistaken for, being quite a bit younger. And really, one of the practices that I think helped me maintain my youthfulness is, in particular, the intestinal cleanse.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it looks to be working.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm just right on board with you in just being so interested in just going back to what empowers us, what actually is effective, what gets to actual root causes of illness, of lack of wellness, rather than, sort of the Band-Aid approach of Western medicine.
Yeah. And it's, it hasn't served us well at all, but the institution of Western medicine is so ridiculously well funded that they can spin reality. They can manage people's perceptions and propagandize us 24/7. So they can make people believe whatever they want them to believe about the effectiveness of modern medicine. But the reality is that, anywhere doctors go on strike in a hospital, what happens? The death rates in the hospital plummet. People stop dying.
Oh my goodness.
It's like everything is backwards. It's like, people who are, in that paradigm, they struggle to reconcile that. But it makes sense, because so much of the disease and the death that goes on today is actually directly caused by the medical system. And the reason it's so invisible to so many people is because the indoctrination tells them otherwise. It's, oh no, we're protecting you from the germs, and we're sterilizing this, and we're going to do the surgery, and you need us, you need this. We're offering you the best possible care on the face of the earth. And it's like, that's pure propaganda, and it's wrong, because the best information and the best methods are out in the so-called alternative realm. Mainstream medicine's good if you break your arm, if you're in an emergency, your heart stops beating or something. That's where you want to go. You want to go to the emergency room. But beyond that, Dr. Robert Mendelssohn himself, he was a GP, and he said that if we got rid of 95% of modern medicine, not only would we not suffer for it, we would be better off. And I completely agree.
Yes, I so agree as well. Did you have some sort of defining experience, maybe with your own health or a loved one, that sort of took you down this path?
I think for me, after I kind of had the spiritual awakening side of things, that opened me up to a whole other paradigm of, what's possible.
Yes.
And, immediately you start realizing the power of the mind. And all these things that the mainstream system doesn't acknowledge properly or fully. And for me, also, it was just like year in, year out, just this experience of the ineffectiveness of, the doctors and the lack of answers and explanations that they had for things. And it was like, oh, this is really, it's pretty deficient.
Yes.
So, inquiring minds want to know what's really going on.
Yes. It seems that you have been on such a path of really seeking out your own answers that resonate for you, and sharing them with the world.
Yeah, that's right. That's my last 20 years has been basically just doing that and writing about it while I'm going. So
yes.
Yeah.
And I have not read your amazing book yet, and I really want to. And I was just wondering if maybe could you share some of your favorite highlights from your book of what you found out on this amazing journey you've been on?
Okay, well, that's a very open question. So, 215,000 words there's a lot of material in there. So, I mean, I found a lot of stuff along the way that I found really interesting, just like mind expanding stuff. For example, there was a pair of Theosophists, occultists, who did an experiment that lasted about 30 years. So from about 1895 to about 1925, they were doing clairvoyant investigations into the atomic structure of matter. And it was a very esoteric kind of thing. And there was no outside, no external sources or third parties that could assess the information at the time. So along comes Dr. Stephen Phillips in the 1980s, and he's a physicist, he's a string theorist, he's got all this expertise and knowledge in that realm, and he sees their work and he studies it from that perspective, and he realizes that what they were describing and visually documenting and drawing these very, very detailed diagrams and explanations, what they were actually seeing was what physicists now call strings, or superstrings, and that this was simply the so-called fabric of space itself, which is really just a kind of an emptiness, spinning vortices, and little bubbles. You can think of these particles as little bubbles. That's what these strings are. And so he was able to basically validate this very esoteric, 1895 to 1925 kind of clairvoyant experiment into the structure of matter itself. And it's fascinating. So, I mean, that was one of the gems that I uncovered along the way.
Wow. So amazing. So really pointing to the power of this clairvoyant skills that these folks had, that measured up to a doctor later on actually confirming the validity of it.
Yeah. And I think as much as that interests me, the nature of space, or, space-time, the matrix, the ether, whatever you want to call it, that was interesting to me as well, because we've had a number of people like Einstein over the years refer to matter as basically emptiness. David Bohm, another physicist, referred to matter as congealed light, I think. And so we've had all these different very kind of esoteric perspectives coming out of physicists, and that's what these occultists have been saying for centuries, really, is that its matter is actually emptiness, and it's emptiness being geometrically structured to create the illusion of something being there. So this is kind of like, in a sense, what we call Maya, the illusion.
Ah, okay. And as you integrate that into sort of your own structure of the world, like how does that inform how you live your life or approach life?
That's a good question, because you're asking what practical value does that knowledge have, really. And I think that it opens a door to inquire into what is real and what is consciousness, and what are we doing here if this is essentially an illusion that we're participating in. And all these interesting kind of tangents spark from there. And I guess one thing that you can take from it is that even though everything's, our senses are designed to tell us that the world around us is, real and tangible and solid, but it's actually built from a matrix of a unified field of consciousness. And we are in that consciousness, but we are also the unified field at the same time. So we are immensely powerful and creative within the illusion. Or we can be anyway, when we start to remember.
Yes. Okay. So spiritually, we are the consciousness sort of playing out these roles in these human vessels, the sort of the creator sort of experiencing itself through itself, and that we are powerful creator beings, that we can bring through our manifestations in this play, this illusion that we're participating in.
Yeah, completely. It's well said. And that's unavoidable. Like, that's the unavoidable kind of conclusion, that if you pull together the mystics, with the physicists and see what these various strains of inquiry are telling us, then that's where you end up. It's like we are basically constructing or projecting a holographic dream world that we are able to participate in. And this is, you know, logically, on logical grounds, I can't see an alternative explanation other than if your starting point is infinite consciousness, then there has to be, essentially, there has to be infinite manifestation, and infinite possibility has to be infinitely manifest so that the creator can experience and explore itself and, you know, evolve along the way and you know, become something else and become something else and become something else, and through direct experience of itself in different formats.
Yes, so well said. Yes, I'm on board with this understanding. It's a little mind-blowing too, to kind of sort of take that all in, how you just described it. And I'm just curious, in your own life, do you consciously, you know, 24/7 think of yourself as creating your own reality? Is that how you live your life?
I wouldn't say it's a 24/7 thing, no, but it's sort of there in the background all the time, you know, and I think I'm accustomed to it after being in it for so long.
Yeah, yeah. I so agree. And then I've also, I would say maybe over the past 10 years or so, it seems like the volume, I would say, of the energies on the planet somewhat being turned up, where a lot of us are, it seems like a lot of powerful energies are coming up for a lot of us with external catalysts that, to me, relate not just to this present life that we're somewhat clearing these energies, but also from our past lives as we're in this ascension process. So I've been, in a way, sort of integrating this belief that we just talked about, as well as it also seems that there are certain situations that are going to present themselves to us in order to fully process and clear situations from past lives and this life that haven't been fully felt. And so there's a little bit of it's like, yes, we can create our reality. And then there are also some situations that are going to come in for our highest and best, so that we can clear that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like working those two conceptualizations together a bit.
Yeah, I think, and Jung said something like, you know, to the extent that you don't, I'm paraphrasing here, but to the extent that you don't integrate the unconscious, then what happens is it is what creates your life experience, and you will call it destiny or you'll call it fate. But it's because, you know, those parts of us, those programs running in the background of the psyche are creative. They are essentially, if you want to put it like this, they're magnetizing experiences to you so that you can potentially, so that you can then integrate that material and move forward. But what a lot of people do is they get stuck in the cycle instead of having the integration or the learning experience, the healing moment that they need to have. They unfortunately keep manifesting the same scenario over and over without a resolution to it, which is really common. So yes, the shadow work thing and the inner work is extremely important, beyond mindset, because I think once you get, like, the mindset thing is like 5% of the puzzle, and then the rest of it is what's going on for you in your, you know, so-called subconscious, because that's what's really creating your experience, or the superconscious, or the infinite, or however you want to conceptualize it. That's where your experience is primarily driven from, and your mindset can have definitely a role to play. But, you know, if we were creating our experience entirely from willpower, we would be exhausted in 2 minutes. You know, it's not how, it's not that important, but it's important, but not that important.
Yes, I love how you described everything you just said. Yes. And I feel like you're basically saying that even just say in the coaching industry, people may just want to sort of put like a veneer or an umbrella over, just work on your mindset. But what you're really beautifully saying is the subconscious, the inner work, that shadow work is really the gold. That's really what we're really being invited to do. And it's often so uncomfortable. And our society, our Western society, really seems to be somewhat built upon distracting us and numbing us from our uncomfortable energies, feelings that are wanting to be witnessed and held and moved through.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And that's unfortunate, but yeah, we have just those endless distractions. And it's like you said, it's not glamorous work to do that. It's some of the most important work you could ever do for yourself to better your life situation.
Yes.
But it's uncomfortable and it hurts and there's tears and all sorts of stuff that, it's not fun at all. And which is why people avoid it, for years and decades. But yeah, from speaking from experience, my own experience and watching other people, I can't advocate a life where you avoid that. It's so self-limiting and it's a form of self-sabotage, because even though it makes sense to avoid pain, it's like, well, it's already happened, so let's integrate that, work through it, and then you can kind of start setting yourself free to have a completely different kind of experience. Whereas if it's not integrated, you get stuck in the repetition of the experience.
So true. And if you don't mind me asking, because I'm always wanting to talk about actual practical ways for people to do this work, because we talk about it, but okay, so how do you actually do it? So do you mind me asking, how do you approach this inner work that we're talking about? What do you actually do?
I guess a few things. One of the things is just to look at what kind of feedback I might get from, the people around me, like not random people, like, Amy, for example. Like if you're in a relationship, now you have a feedback loop and someone who can tell you, hey, are you being a dick? And if there's something valid there, then that gives you something to work with. If you're not behaving appropriately, then there's something there for you to maybe, self-reflect on, see what's driving that, inquire into yourself, what is it that makes you uncomfortable in this situation? You dive into that. What is it that makes you, want to cry excessively when something's only a little bit upsetting, but you have a disproportionate reaction? So you look into that and pull on the thread and go, where is this leading me in my psyche, in maybe my memories or my experiences? What does that open up for me? And then you have stuff, you got all sorts of tools like EFT or matrix re-imprinting and Psych-K and all these things where we can literally reprogram the hemispheres of the brain, make them synchronize up more, rewire, create new neural networks. So it's not all just willpower is a very limited tool. And so we have like all these other useful tools to actually work with the body and hack into the body. Like EFT is good like that, because it actually is working with the meridians, which is moving energy in. If you consider the body to be the subconscious mind, then that's great, because now you're actually working with the body and subconscious mind. Whereas, if you go to talk therapy, you're just talking, you're stuck at the mental level, which is generally very useless most of the time. So yeah, there's a few ideas.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. My background is I have a PhD in psychotherapy, and just what you said, it blows my mind. My entire 7 years of clinical training, we never talked about people feeling their feelings. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. It was just about talking, and really not accessing the energy, not navigating on an energetic level, and you're really moving energy through us.
Totally.
It's just amazing. I feel one of the biggest things I do with clients is just to help them feel their feelings, especially men. Often, understandably, in our culture, they don't know how to feel feelings.
Yeah.
They do, and even just starting with a basic, like, what feeling do you think you're having? Even just naming feelings, starting, at that very foundational level. Goodness gracious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Something happened to civilization and society along the way where we just lost that connection to the body, and we just became
Yes.
like these floating heads, just kind of like in like a little fishbowl, like walking around. Like, oh yeah, we'll just talk about it. We don't need to feel the body. We don't need to work with the body, because I think a lot of it comes out of the sort of Christian or Catholic arena, where there's a lot of shame attached to the physicality of our existence, right? Adam and Eve, covering themselves when they realize they're naked, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. We've got a lot of shame programmed into us through
Yes.
centuries. And then, so we're like, okay, well, let's, instead of going there, we'll just block it out. And then we build these lives where we have, like you said, endless distractions to keep us mentally occupied, so that we're not actually physical beings anymore. And those, I think all those indigenous cultures around the world that, were mostly wiped out by the colonization process. I mean, they had that kind of just a natural instinctive connection to the body. They haven't lost that. They're still working with the body now. And that's what we're now recovering. We're recovering from this kind of like amnesia, where we're like, oh, hang on a minute, there's actually some value here. And not being so repressed emotionally like that. Again, I think religion's been a huge part of that. And just the ability for someone to recognize that, oh yeah, like I've got like a lot of built up emotion, and I think I need to cry. Like I had a guy email me or message me inside Evolve Yourself, and he was like, do you have any tips around what to do to release the flood of tears that he feels is in there somewhere, after decades of living without releasing properly. And I just said something to the effect of, you can just go and watch something that's moving that, prods you in that emotional direction, and it'll happen. If it's going to happen, it'll happen. And you don't need any fancy techniques. It's just connecting to the feeling, like I think you said.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Everything you just said. I so agree about just, yes, a lot of us, I know myself for years, I was just only up here in my thinking mind. I was not in my body. I was really not feeling. I know a lot of people who live like that still. And one of my biggest phrases I get from my own guidance is feel your way through, not think your way through. And I literally just sort of visualize my consciousness just dropping down, as you're showing, like below my neck into my body. Sometimes I'll imagine sort of being in my heart mind, I like to call it, but similar, my body, my heart mind. And how does it feel, whatever decision I'm making or what I'm, moving through, how is it feeling down here? And that is my guide. That is my litmus test. If it's feeling resonant and good, am I getting like a screaming yes even, then okay, that's my path. And if it's not feeling good, resonant, then I know that's not my path, no matter what my thinking mind might think.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man, I was just going to add to that, and I've lost my my train of thought, but yeah, it is so important to tune into that feeling. If you look at the psychic research and parapsychology, heaps of experiments have been done around the body actually being able to sense information ahead of the actual, say, the revealing of that information, if you like. So, Dean Radin did some really interesting experiments around this, where he measured the electrical responses in people's fingertips based on what was about to be shown on a screen in front of them. And every time there was an image that was, like emotionally provocative, people would have a galvanic skin response before the image was actually shown. And when there was just a boring plain image that was about to be shown, they wouldn't have that response. And this was a very robust, consistent effect that he found. So to your point, the intuition is largely through the antenna of the body. The body is what gives us all this information from the field. And like, you got the heart brain, like you mentioned, we got the gut brain, we got the cerebral brain, and all this, so if we're just up here, we're disconnected from a massive amount of bodily resources and, knowing.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. And it's almost like our thinking mind is really just attuned to, say, the collective programming. our own programming, our own beliefs. They may be very limiting. But as you said, the heart brain, the gut brain, those are connected to something much greater, the quantum field, source, spirit, however you want to think of it, all those things, infinite intelligence. And I think I'm just still really understanding that's what's going on.
Yeah, and the great research that's been done has shown that there is an objective aspect to that intuition, to that those psychic abilities. And we can measure that and test that to a certain point. And then it gets a bit more interesting and messy when you go outside of the realm that can be tested into, like visionary experiences and archetypal experiences, because you're still tuning into the field, the information field of the collective, which can be very persuasive and at the same time also not necessarily give the right information.
Right. I'm curious too. I feel very connected to the shamanic way of life, and part of that is really seeing everything as information, animals that cross your path and numbers you might see, and even weather patterns, and just sort of like constantly spirit talking to us in certain ways. Do you sort of believe in that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like synchronicity, right? Like, if you accept the idea that we are in a holographic projection that we are creating, then our fingerprints are all over the whole thing. So we're going to have these moments where it's like this, the eagle flies in front of your face at just this profound moment, something's just happened, or whatever the event is, and we have these, and the more plugged into your, I think, authenticity in your path that you are, the more those types of experiences naturally just happen spontaneously.
Yes.
And when people are not on their path, like not living in their truth, they tend to have less of those experiences. And the paradigm of thinking, well, say you're an atheist who doesn't think there's anything besides the 5 sense reality.
Yeah.
That belief system then filters out all those experiences, and it becomes almost impossible to have those types of synchronistic events happen, because on that unconscious level, you are magnetizing the non-synchronistic event over and over and over, because it needs to support your belief system. So yeah, being open is a fundamental part of it as well.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Totally. You get what you expect. If you're expecting just a very linear world with no magic, then that is likely what is going to be reflected back to you, right?
Completely.
That's really cool. Do you have some particular spiritual practices that you do? I know, like, for instance, I do some shamanic journeying. That's like a favorite way for me to sort of connect in. Do you have your own way to connect to all of that?
When I was in my early 20s, say 20 to 22, I did a lot of meditating. And that was something I used to do. I haven't really gone back to it. And my practices as such are probably a little more somatic now. It's more like, I want to go and stand in the morning sun and do some qigong. I want to do some breathing, breath work. Maybe some Wim Hof style breathing, that kind of stuff, just supporting the bodily awareness, supporting the bodily temple, and, maintaining it at a high level. That is kind of more where I find it easy to do that kind of thing than to sit and meditate now. I don't know why. I just am not really drawn to that type of thing at the moment, and haven't been for a while. But I think partly because I spend so much time sitting around as it is, on the computer or whatever. I gotta move. I got a lot of energy. I got a lot of things on my plate, like creatively. So I'm not really drawn to being super introspective at this phase of my life in that sort of sense.
Yes. Oh, I totally agree. I have never really resonated with sitting and closing my eyes and meditating. That may be the same thing, because I do a lot of work on my computer too. So I like to do, I sort of call it like a walking meditation. Like, one of my favorite things, very similar to what you said, is just going out in nature and walking. And I just feel very connected in those moments to spirit.
Yeah, just the ability to be present, I think, is so profound.
Oh my goodness.
I
so agree.
It's so underrated. And if you can be present and enjoy, like right now we have a beautiful backyard that makes me want to go and sit outside and just sit there and just soak it up. And that to me is, why isn't that a spiritual experience? That's, if that's nourishing and it makes you feel that you're actually really there in the moment, then
Yes, I so agree. I so agree. Of just it seems so simple. Just be present. Don't be in your thinking mind and thinking of the past, future, whatever, but just be in the moment and be experiencing your senses. And it seems so simple. It's not always that easy for us Westerners to do, I think, or necessarily valued. And it's really interesting that you said that, because I'm finding I was so not present for most of my life before my awakening, and a lot of healing and all of that. And now I find it to be maybe my favorite thing is just to be present with myself in my body and just feeling whatever is there. Even sometimes when it's super painful, it's still like there's a purity to it. There's a holiness to it, that I am being with myself. I'm not distracting, numbing, abandoning myself. I'm present with myself, with spirit. And I think it's my favorite thing to do, actually. It's just to be present with myself.
Yeah. And it probably feels amazing after a lifetime of not being able to do it, to come home and be like, oh, this is what it feels like,
Exactly.
Because so many people out there are traumatized, and not being present is a way of coping with, all the crap that's still stored in the body. So of course it's understandable that you want to dissociate from that. That's a natural defense mechanism. So yeah, it's about creating a situation and a space where you can actually start to feel safe, coming back to center. And then eventually, you will reach a point where it really feels good and it's not a threatening or intimidating thing anymore.
I love what you just said, because you're so right. When I first started being more present with myself, it was very painful, because there was so much there that I still needed to really feel and process and integrate. And did you have that same experience too, when earlier on?
That's a good question, actually. I think I'm not sure if I can really definitively answer that, because of my journey has been kind of like, I wouldn't say I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of kind of bullshit and dumb stuff that I did that I probably didn't want to look at as such, which I things that you wish you hadn't done or said.
Yeah, sure.
And so that has just been kind of like a gradual, over the years, just kind of like, oh, remember that thing? Oh yeah. And then you kind of maybe just sit with that for a minute and just work with that, just bring that memory back in, reintegrate it. Because if you've got that charge, that emotional charge still associated with a memory, whatever the memory is, then the natural inclination is to avoid it and want to be out here and dissociated. And so just gradually finding those bits and pieces, like kind of like soul fragments, and just going, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this. Okay, I'll sit with that. That's okay. It's not a problem. It's fine. It's all good. Without the self-judgment and the shame and all this kind of stuff. And just presence again.
Yes, so beautifully said, Brendan. I'm just very excited about everything we're talking about. And I so agree with you that it feels like a form of soul retrieval when we sit with those emotional charges, and really just integrate these pieces of ourselves that had been shut off or dismissed or shamed. And I just have a nudge to say for anyone who's listening, who maybe is interested in this process, and I'd love to hear what you would say. I would just suggest just to spend some time alone. That's one of my sort of go-to answers about how do you do this work? How do you connect with yourself? How do you start really tuning into your intuition? Is spend some time alone really helps. Would you agree?
I think it does. And then if you're in a situation where it's too intense and it's too overwhelming, then it's like, okay, so, you know, maybe you want to look into working with someone who is, you know, in the vein of, say, like what's the word? A body psychotherapist, or, you know, like someone like, you know, Dr. Peter Levine in the way that he works with people, or Dr. Bessel van der Kolk in the way he works with people. So, you know, if you can't be the container for yourself, then someone else can be there as, you know, to co-create a container where you can little bit by little bit start grappling with that and coming back to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's just so amazing how just probably most of us in the West, our trajectory, we come into our little bodies as infants, and then almost as soon as we arrive, we really are taught to turn away from ourselves in every way, to listen to the parents, the teachers, the religious figures, to ignore our feelings, to often ignore the dreams in our heart, to not trust our own intuition, that's, you know, often really even like belittled as, well, that's not really real. I'm just amazed at how we are just taught to abandon ourselves, and then hopefully along the way we, you know, have some type of catalyst. Sometimes it's a very traumatic to the human experience. I know for me, what really brought me back to myself was a very difficult divorce custody situation, where, you know, there really weren't answers on the external. Like, I really had no place to go but to turn within. And then of course that became such a blessing to have done that. But it's just an amazing path that we're on, and just this seems simple act of coming back to yourself and the answers from your own connection with spirit and intuition. It's mind-blowing. I always thought, you know, oh, everyone else knows what's good for me, and I just need to follow what other people say. And that was just a complete catastrophe, basically.
Yeah, and it is like, if you carry, because as children, that's kind of how it has to be, right? You have to outsource your knowingness to your parents, because you don't know what the hell is going on in the world, right? Like,
right.
No, a 2-year-old will do 100 different things during the day that could seriously injure them if you're not really paying attention.
Yes.
So they learn, like we learn from experience from a very young age that somebody else, you know, knows better than we do, which is valid until, you know, you're no longer in such a state where that's appropriate. Like, so, you know, it's not appropriate for a 40-year-old to carry that belief around and operate their life according to that machinery in their psyche. And then that, it's like you said, you know, a lot of people hit that point where their life like basically has to burn to ashes in order for them to finally go, oh, okay, hang on, what do I need? What do I think about this? How do I feel about this? And then they start, you know, that's like the paradigm shift. But it's so often we avoid that to the nth degree, like the last possible moment. And then the universe is like, nope, bang. And then you're like, you're going to do this. You're going to wake up and you're going to come back now.
Yes, exactly. I always say that I'm always kicking and screaming my way, you know, back to myself. Like, the universe just leaves me no choice. There's only one path to go on. And I'm like, no, don't. I'm still grasping for what my human thinks, you know, is like comfortable. Even in just a quick example, in my divorce custody situation that I referenced, I was doing everything I could to just not leave my ex-husband, because I really didn't want to leave my kids, and I didn't want to be alone. Also, I didn't want to face what was percolating inside of me that really needed to be felt and come through. And the universe just kept turning up the volume until I had no choice but to leave for a lot of reasons. And I'm sort of amused by how the universe will not, it's going to put you on your path. And you can keep resisting, but life keeps getting harder and harder and harder. And I also think, you know, even physical disease and these things, you know, can manifest when you're really just so misaligned, and not on the path. And so it's just like, okay, surrender. You can go the hard way or the easy way. And at this point, I just have learned, okay, I'm yours. I surrender to the path that you seem to be leading me on, Spirit. I will not fight it anymore.
Yeah, totally. And that's a good word. That's the word for it, is surrender. And, I've seen a bunch of examples in like the near-death experience literature where people have this, they are physiologically dead and they go off and have this experience in, the information field of the world of spirit, whatever you want to call it. And, they are shown that before they selected their body and incarnated, that they had already picked 2 or 3 different points in their life to come that would be transformative trigger events. And they're like, oh shit, I missed the opportunity there. Oh, I missed the opportunity there. I was still resisting here. And now I had this 4th opportunity that I've pre-programmed in, which was there was no way out, and I just was not going to be able to worm my way out of this. So it had to happen. The transformation had to happen. And I think a lot of that holds some it gives us something to think about.
That's so interesting. So meaning, just to clarify, that when these people had these near-death experiences, part of the reason they ended up having such a dramatic experience was there were other opportunities that they sort of didn't take. And so then they were brought into a near-death experience. So here you go. Here's your transformative experience, whether you're ready or not.
Yeah, that's actually the case for some people, is that's like the last straw
that is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this is like the part of the magic of and the mystery of the experience that we're having. I mean, a lot of our worst hardships are evidently self-selected in advance so that we can take a different path and ultimately grow and expand. And then it's like we're on this pendulum swing the whole time through the process of incarnating through whether you think one life or 1,000 lives. Yes. And we swing away from remembrance of self and self-awareness, and then something happens to push us back in the other direction and we start to remember. And those types of experiences seem to be pre-programmed to facilitate that the shift back in a more aligned, authentic, conscious direction.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love all that. And it's very comforting to the human to be able to just trust life. This is one of my favorite affirmations. I say it a lot, especially when my human is in fear. I trust life. I trust that everything that is happening in my life and in everyone else's life is ultimately serving everyone's highest and best. Even, in the short term, in the moment, it may not feel like it, may not seem like it, but it's a relief to surrender and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the idea that we're in control, I think can be quite insidious and, unhelpful if you take it too far. I mean, I don't feel like I've been in control of a whole lot here for the last 20 years. It's like there's something else that's got a lot more influence and say over it than I do.
I totally agree. And the way I've sort of landed on that topic is I feel like the flavor, the essence of our heartfelt desires, we absolutely can manifest. I think they're there for a reason. And I feel that we are creator beings, we are God, God is us. So they're like literally God's dreams, being blown through us. How the essence of those dreams, how that actually looks is up for grabs. Our human might have preferences about that, but so I do believe we can live out our dreams, and they just might manifest in a form that we didn't expect, or maybe we had different preferences about it. But that, yes, there is something so much larger running the show, and it feels like the human is somewhat along for the ride, inputting our own desires, God's desires into the dream as well. It's like we're co-creating, I guess would be the way to say it.
Yeah, totally. And I basically agree with that assessment, and the human has the ability to, put its own flavor on things, put its own interpretation on things. I can choose in the morning whether I make a smoothie or a tonic, like these
Right.
kinds of choices we can decide on. But the bigger path stuff, the bigger picture stuff is kind of already it's pre-planned. It's not necessarily predetermined. It's not guaranteed as an outcome, but it is pre-selected as a pathway for the human avatar or the eidolon to go and walk that path. And if our desires, like you mentioned, are really genuinely aligned with that path that was pre-selected from the level of spirit, then it will pan out, it will work out, it will succeed. And the stuff that's not really authentic to us, it's made, conditioned in by society or whatever, I want the Lamborghini or whatever, that kind of stuff tends to either be very, very difficult to create or impossible.
Yes, I so agree. And just one more little point around this is, and it's really just our higher self that has, worked this path with us. So sometimes I would think, this external, like an older understanding, I'd be like, oh, God has planned these things for me. No, I am God to myself. Like, I have planned these things for me. Which is I like that better than feeling like someone else outside of me has,
completely. And that's a much more platonic kind of a way of looking at it. Before Christianity kind of hijacked spirituality, that was, Plato would talk about the daemon, this other being, that would speak to him and give him, guidance. And the guidance was always right. It was always accurate. And he talked about Socrates having these type of experiences. And that's the so-called, if you want to call it the higher self or whatever, this other part of us that is outside of what we think of as the space-time matrix, which has access to a hell of a lot more perspective than we do, and which was the part of us that maybe pre-selected this little avatar's journey, then
yes. Yes. It feels better.
Yeah, and it's more true. It's more true to reality, the nature of reality itself. And that to me is the bottom line, is to develop an accurate understanding of things, which, a lot of our religious systems and, particularly Judeo-Christianity doesn't really facilitate an accurate understanding of the nature of self and reality.
Absolutely. And it is so ultimately disempowering. Brendan, it's such a delight to speak with you. You're just such a beautiful, amazing, conscious being. And before we run out of time, I wanted to make sure people could know where to find you. What are some great websites maybe they could find you at?
Okay, so just quickly, if they want to check out the Truthiversity, that's truthiversity.com. If they want to look at the Evolve Yourself DNA activation stuff, there's a free masterclass at evolveyourself.live. You can find my BitChute channel on BitChute. It's Brendan D. Murphy Official. If you search for Brendan D. Murphy Official on pretty much any social channel, you'll find me there. I think they're the main ones. Truthiverse, the podcast, truthiverse.com. So Truthiverse and Truthiversity linked to each other. They're the big ones, I think.
Wonderful. And I just cannot recommend Brendan highly enough. He's the real deal, folks. He walks his talk and is such a seeker of truth and consciousness. And just, we're really honored to have Brendan on the planet. Thank you for being here. Thank you for incarnating and shining your massive light and helping so many people on the planet.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement, and also you and your work and your awesomeness as well. Fully acknowledge that. So thanks. It's been awesome to chat, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yes. I'm just a huge fan. You're just awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you to the listeners, and just sending everybody lots of love.
Thank you for joining Dr. Tassel Faith, Priestess of Metamorphosis, on your road to transformation and freedom. Each step takes you closer to becoming an awakened, empowered, courageous, and a moves mountains kind of person. Join us again, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month at 12 noon Eastern Time for more guidance and encouragement. Until then, lead with your magic, trust the unseen, experience quantum leaps.